Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're about to spend the next 30 days diving deep into the world of cannabinoid pharmacology.
It's going to be like going behind the scenes to learn how this whole field works.
I've always been kind of fascinated by how THC and CBD can have such totally different effects,
Yeah.
But I gotta admit, the science behind it has always felt a little out of my league.
Well, that's exactly what this deep dive is all about.
Yeah.
We're breaking down all these complicated ideas into easy-to-understand daily episodes.
And we're not just skimming the surface here. We're using this amazing AI tool from Google called Notebook LM.
Great.
It's processed like millions and millions of words of research on cannabinoids.
It's basically like having a whole team of experts condensing all the most important info and insights just for us.
So how's this whole thing work?
So each day you'll get a brand new podcast episode focusing on one specific part of cannabinoid pharmacology.
Okay, cool.
And it gets even better. You'll also have access to full transcripts, audio files, and even the instructions we gave to the AI. So you can really see how it all comes together.
That's awesome.
And if you're the kind of person who likes to test themselves a bit, we've got pre- and post quizzes too.
Oh, nice.
Those will help you keep track of your progress. And there's even an expert level quiz if you really want to challenge yourself.
Love that.
Yeah. And we've also built in what's called a spiral learning approach.
Okay.
We know that some of this stuff can get pretty complex.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're going to revisit some of the key concepts a few times throughout the series, adding a little more each time.
So it's like we're building a solid foundation of knowledge, brick by brick.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's talk about what you can actually expect to learn on this 30-day adventure.
Right.
One of the most fascinating parts of this whole field is the endocannabinoid system, or ECS.
Right?
It's this incredible network in our bodies that plays a role in just about everything from sleep and appetite to pain perception and immune function.
It's really involved in so many essential processes, and yet most people haven't even heard of it.
I know, right? And that's where things get super interesting.
Yeah.
We'll be looking at how the ECS actually works, how it interacts with all the different cannabinoids, and what implications it has for our overall health and well-being.
Exactly. And we'll also explore the potential for cannabinoids to be used as therapies.
Okay.
We'll look at their role in managing chronic pain and even their possible uses for treating things like anxiety and epilepsy.
One thing that's always blown my mind is this idea of the entourage effect.
Oh, yeah.
This is that concept that different cannabinoids, when they're combined,
Yeah.
they can create a more powerful effect together than they could individually.
It's a good reminder that nature is often way more complex and nuanced than we think at first.
For sure.
Ah.
So before we jump into day one, I really encourage you to take a minute and think about any questions you have about cannabinoids.
Yeah.
What misconceptions are you hoping to clear up? What are you most excited to learn about?
We're here to guide you through this whole journey, but your curiosity is really what's going to lead the way.
Yeah, exactly. And who knows, by the end of this whole deep dive, you might just become a passionate advocate for cannabinoid science yourself.
I hope so.
I know I am.
Me too. Yeah, it really makes you wonder what other amazing discoveries are still out there waiting for us. But let's talk about something more practical for a second.
Yeah.
How can our listeners really make the most of this 30-day experience?
Yeah. What are your tips?
Well, first of all, I'd say come into it with an open mind. Some of the stuff we're going to be talking about might actually challenge some of your existing beliefs about cannabis and what it can do.
That's what I love about the deep dive, though.
Yeah.
It's all about exploring new perspectives and coming to your own conclusions.
Absolutely. And remember, you're not alone on this journey either. We've built in a few ways for you to interact with the material and with other learners.
Oh, cool. Give us the inside scoop.
Well, each day's episode will have a super detailed transcript.
Wow.
So if there's a specific concept you want to revisit, or maybe there's a term you need clarified, you can always just go back to the text.
That's super helpful, especially with some of the scientific terms.
Yeah.
I know I need to hear things a few times sometimes for them to really sink in.
Absolutely. And we've also included audio files so you can listen to the episodes at your own pace.
Oh, yeah.
Rewind sections really let that information soak in.
Oh, and speaking of replay value, did we mention you can actually play around with generating different versions of the podcast
Oh, yeah, that's right.
using the same prompts that we gave to the AI?
You can basically create a personalized lecture that's tailored to your own specific interests and your learning style.
Wow, that's so cool. Now let's talk about the quizzes. How can our listeners use those to their advantage?
So the pre-quiz is a really great way to kind of gauge where you're at with your understanding.
Right.
Before you dive in, don't worry too much about getting every answer right. It's more like a starting point so you can compare it to how much you've learned by the end.
And the post-quiz, of course, is to help you see how far you've come and figure out any areas where you might want to go back and review the material.
Right. And then for those who really want to push themselves a bit further, we have that special expert level quiz. It's like the bonus level of cannabinoid pharmacology.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so now that we've covered the how-to, let's give our listeners a little taste of what are some of the mind-blowing things that they're going to learn in this series?
Well, one of the things that always fascinates me is just how many different cannabinoids there are.
Okay.
We usually only hear about THC and CBD, but there are actually over 100 different cannabinoids.
Wow, over 100.
Yeah, that have been found in the cannabis plant.
I had no idea. And do all these cannabinoids interact with our bodies in the same way?
That's a great question, and the answer is no. Each cannabinoid has its own unique characteristics, and it interacts with the endocannabinoid system differently.
Okay, it's already blowing my mind.
Yeah.
Can you give us an example? Like, how is THC different from CBD in terms of its effects?
Sure. So THC is the cannabinoid that's mainly responsible for the psychoactive effects of cannabis. It's the one that gives you that high feeling that people usually associate with it.
Right.
It binds to what we call CB1 receptors, which are mostly located in the brain and the central nervous system.
So that's why THC can affect things like mood and perception and coordination.
Exactly. Now, CBD, on the other hand, has a much weaker connection to CB1 receptors, and it can actually adjust the effects of THC.
Interesting.
It's also believed to interact with other receptors in the body, which might explain why it has such a wide range of potential therapeutic benefits.
Yeah, I've heard so much about CBD and its potential for treating things like anxiety, epilepsy, and chronic pain.
Right. Those are just a few examples. Research into the therapeutic uses of CBD is still going strong, and we're really just beginning to understand all that it can do.
This is all so fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm already feeling a lot more confident in my knowledge of cannabinoids, and we've only just scratched the surface.
Right.
What else can our listeners look forward to in this series?
Well, we're going to delve into the history of how cannabis has been used over time. We'll explore the laws and regulations surrounding cannabinoids.
Okay.
And we'll also look at the ethical side of cannabinoid research and therapy.
Wow, it sounds like we're going to be covering a lot of ground.
We are.
Can't wait to unpack all of this with you. Wow, it sounds like it's going to be quite a journey these next 30 days. But before we officially kick things off, I have to ask, what's one thing you're hoping our listeners will take away from this whole deep dive?
That's a great question. You know, for me, it's all about empowering people with knowledge. I think the world of cannabinoids can be really confusing, even intimidating. There's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah.
And it can be tough to know what's true and what's not.
Especially with all the hype around cannabis these days.
Exactly. So what I really hope is that this series will give our listeners the tools to think critically about the information they come across, form their own opinions, and advocate for themselves when it comes to their health and well-being.
That's such an important point. It's not about us telling people what to think, but giving them the knowledge to make those decisions themselves.
Exactly. And one of the coolest things about this field for me is seeing how much knowledge can actually change people's lives. I've seen people find relief from chronic pain, manage anxiety, and really reclaim their quality of life just by understanding more about cannabinoids and the endocannabinoid system.
Those are the kinds of stories that get me excited. It reminds me that science isn't just some abstract concept.
Right.
It can actually make a difference in the real world.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe some of our listeners will be inspired to pursue careers in cannabinoid science.
Oh, yeah.
Contribute to this field that's always evolving, help unlock even more of its potential.
No, that's a really exciting thought.
Yeah.
So for anyone who's listening and ready to start this journey with us, what's the first step?
Head on over to our website and take that pre-quiz. It's a great way to kind of figure out where you're at now and set some goals for yourself.
Awesome. And then join us tomorrow for day 1, where we'll officially start our deep dive into the world of cannabinoid pharmacology.
Can't wait to explore it all with you.
See you there.